A basic tenet of our business model was that the majority of the money should go to the person who's doing the work. It's one thing to be in sales and service and bring the people together, but it's another thing to be the contractor on the street who's day in, day out going to the client and doing what's expected of them. In the old days, the systems integrators played a major role. And in doing so, they would put a person out on a rate and take 40 or 50% of that rate as their income, their margin. The model that Procom advanced was that we would pay 80% of the funds to the contractor, taking 20% to cover our costs. Transparency is something that people talk about today, but back in the day that was not the case. The general posture of the market was, I know the rate and it's none of your business. Our approach was different. We felt that the contractor should know every aspect of the relationship. So we disclosed the rate, we showed them all the details. And in doing so, I think we earned a measure of trust with the individual that what we said was what we did. Two of my foundational beliefs are in the following statements. People want to be pleasantly surprised as opposed to being mildly disappointed. The second one is that anyone can deal with anything as long as they know what they're dealing with before the fact, as opposed to finding about it after the fact. Where the competition was leaning towards overselling to the contractors and the clients alike, we were adopting an approach where we would undersell and then overperform. On the contractor side of the equation, the competition would oversell a deal to entice the contractor to accept the contractor. Once the contractor was engaged and found out the realities of what they were going to be asked to do, they had some challenges. If they left the contract, they would have a bad name and their reputation in the market. They would not get a good reference. But if they stayed, they would find their technical skills being stale and they would not be contributing to the knowledge that they had to get. In many cases, the performance of the contractor suffered because of a negative attitude that they developed due to their circumstances. In one instance, I placed a contractor named Mike at a client, and it was in the early 80s, market was tight. Mike was a top-of-the-line online developer. The only contract I had for him was a batch maintenance. I told him what the deal was. He said he needed the work, and so we put him into the assignment. And he brought his typical professionalism to the work and did a great job for the client. One day the client came up and approached me and he said, I'm curious here. Mike is clearly talented and could do online work, but here he is doing this grunt maintenance work without any complaint. Conversely, his coworker, who's got questionable skills, is in here complaining all the time that he wants online work. And I simply explained our philosophy. Mike knew what he was signing up for and he made the commitment. And the client responding, he says, well, his attitude served him well. I'm moving him more to the online side. He's going to take a leadership role on that side, and the other contractors being terminated. I was asked to replace them both. Payment upon presentation is another hallmark of our company. As a contractor, I recognize the challenges of invoicing a client and then waiting 30, 60, 90 days for payment. It's just something you can't do. If you have a normal person in a normal home relationship, family relationship, requires a consistency of cash flow. Procom delivered that. We paid upon the presentation of a signed or approved timesheet. We would then absorb the delay that would happen. Now, to minimize that delay, we implemented practices which accelerated the process. For instance, I used to call the hours up and get them from the individuals. They would come in by fax or by telephone call. We would generate the invoices overnight using a computer program that I developed. And we would, on the first day of the month, we would go around and personally deliver the check to the individual for the work they'd done in the previous month and the invoice to the client, which would go directly to the manager's name for sign-off and approval. My process was I would take the timesheet as presented to me, handed to me by the contractor, attach it the invoice and present it. This practice really accelerated the process, made the numbers available to the manager at the earliest possible time, and contributed to an accelerated cash flow for Procom. My pay upon presentation approach presented some challenges, but it also presented some opportunities. On the first day of the month, I would have the opportunity to talk to each of my contractors personally. I would get a sense of what they were doing, where they were going, the work they were doing, and opportunities that existed inside. I also had a chance to talk to the managers who would tell me what their upcoming work was and how the people were performing. And it was a very positive situation. In many cases, the time invested resulted in orders for new people. One night after a successful month, at a time when interest rates were very high, I closed off my business day by writing a series of checks for people that I was going to deliver the next morning. Those checks would have put me $250,000 over my line of credit at the bank. My wife and I then went to a funeral for a friend, at which point in time they asked me to sign in. For whatever reason, I was unable to write my signature on the guest book. I had to step aside and ask my wife to do it. This was something that would happen to me a number of times thereafter. It was essentially a sign of stress because we were always functioning that close to the limit. That inability to sign my name occurred a number of times, and although it's been a long time since it has reoccurred, which is good, it became my personal measure of stress. Our month-end process continued. One day we came up to a significant challenge. There wasn't enough time to prepare all the checks and to visit all the people on one day. We had to spread it over 2 days. The deferral to 2 days was not well received, but grudgingly understood by the individuals who accommodated it. We were still light years ahead of anything that the competition was providing. As we grew, we brought other people on board, other salespeople. You can just imagine the chaos when 200, 300, 400, 500, 1,000 people being paid. Patty Niles came in and joined us. She's with us to this day and helped us through the challenges. It was organized confusion, but a very effective organized confusion.